don't know. The same 3 words, over and over, in a voice that doesn't sound like it belongs to the man saying them. The footage was reportedly filmed during Eucharistic adoration at Our Lady of Grace Catholic Church in North Carolina. A man, in visible distress, is repeating himself in a tone that sounds strained, almost involuntary, as though the words are being pulled out of him against his will. According to the person who posted the clip, a priest arrived shortly after and performed an exorcism. They say the man was eventually calmed and walked out of the church under his own power. The obvious read is a mental health crisis. Dissociative episodes can produce exactly this kind of repetitive, involuntary speech, and a church full of strangers calmly praying through it is arguably the worst place in the world for someone in acute distress to find themselves. The people closest to him didn't react the way you'd expect. Nobody called for help. Nobody tried to calm him down. They kept their heads bowed and kept praying as if they'd seen this kind of thing before.
You can't move a little ball. I'm asking you, I'm challenging you to move it.
He's been challenging it for months, calling it pathetic, telling it to prove itself, and now something in the room is starting to answer back.
Are you that pathetic as a spirit that you can't do something?
Watch the baby gate. That's 13 seconds into the clip. No one's touching it. No one's near it. The gate swings open on its own. The footage comes from YouTube channel Really Haunted, a creator we've covered before. He's been documenting what he believes is an ongoing haunting inside his own home, and for this latest upload, he's set up an SLS camera in the living room.
Can you do it again for me, please?
For anyone unfamiliar, an SLS camera is a modified Xbox Kinect sensor. Paranormal investigators use them because they're designed to map human figures in 3D, which means, in theory, if the camera starts drawing a stick figure where no person is standing, something is triggering the sensor that shouldn't be there.
There's a little one just appeared over there.
And on this particular night, the camera doesn't stop drawing them.
Show me your strength. Right, there's one there. It's cold, gone, but like that area is cold.
Figures appear throughout the room. Small ones, large ones, some stationary, some moving. The creator sits among them trying to goad whatever's there into doing something he can't dismiss.
Knock this ball, knock it from in between my legs. You can't move a little ball. I'm asking you, I'm challenging you to move it.
For a long stretch, nothing happens. He keeps pushing, calls it powerless, calls it a coward, tells it a real ghost would have no trouble moving the ball sitting right there on the floor.
Are you that pathetic as a spirit that you can't do something? Does it bother you that I can do it? The things I'm telling you to do, I can do. I don't know if that's inside.
Then, at 9 minutes and 7 seconds in, the sensor picks up a small figure near the door.
Talk to me.
And the door starts banging.
Talk to me. There's one there.
50 seconds later, it happens again.
Sir, if you're still here on that device as well. Did it again.
That's also when the voices start. He claims to be picking up responses through a spirit box, short clipped phrases cutting through the static.
Who? If you didn't hear that, it said, "We have always been here." Move that ball.
It's almost time.
It's almost time. Time for what?
They are waiting. Event imminent.
What event are you talking about?
He presses for more, asks what event, asks who's waiting. The answers don't come. But the back of his head, he says, has started to ache. A sharp, physical soreness, he claims, began the moment something touched him from behind.
You know already.
Oh, he's done it again. I know what already. Have you just touched me on the back of my head? That was harder.
Then at 12 minutes and 14 seconds, the SLS picks up something new. A figure on the floor, crawling. And that ball he'd been taunting the entity to move, the one he'd spent the last 10 minutes calling it pathetic for ignoring, starts rolling across the room. A minute and a half later, something happens. Not nudged, not shifted, tipped over with no one within reach of it. The obvious counter is that SLS cameras are famously unreliable. The Kinect sensor they're built from was designed to find humans in a living room so you could play video games, and it routinely draws figures where there are none. Coat racks, lamps, folds in a curtain. Every serious investigator knows this. But SLS artifacts don't explain gates swinging open. They don't explain doors banging on cue. They don't explain a ball that rolls on command after 10 minutes of being dared to, or a table that tips itself over while the camera is still running. And whatever came through on that spirit box has been sitting with viewers for a while now.
Move that ball.
It's almost time.
It's almost time. Time for what?
They are waiting. Event imminent.
What event are you talking about?
Where's the cat gone?
Look at the gap beneath the door.
Thank you, Patricia.
No shadow, no feet, no silhouette. And yet a set of small pale fingers are curling around the edge of the doorframe like a child peering in.
Where's the cat gone? Oh. Thank you, Patricia.
The footage was captured live during a makeup tutorial. The creator is mid-sentence, casually wondering out loud where her kitten has wandered off to, completely unaware of what her viewers are seeing unfold behind her.
Is he in there? Where's the cat?
The fingers don't move much. They grip the edge of the wood, delicate, thin, unmistakably human, and just hang there. Then they're gone.
Thank you, Patricia. Sorry, Amber. Jeez, cat.
It's the detail at floor level that's kept this clip circulating. A child in the household reaching around the door would cast a shadow in the gap underneath. A foot, a knee, but there's nothing. The fingers appear to belong to a body that isn't there.
Thank you, Patricia. Sorry, Amber. Jeez, cat.
And because this was a live stream, there was no chance to edit, no chance to stage. Whatever the camera saw, her audience saw at the same time. She didn't.
Where is my kitten? Is he in there? Where's the cat?
Watch that gap again. If you can explain what should be there and isn't, you're doing better than the thousands of commenters who couldn't.
Thank you, Patricia. Sorry, Amber. Jeez, cat.
The break room door at this psychiatric hospital was never supposed to close on its own. A doorstop had been wedged under it for exactly that reason. Staff kept it propped open on purpose. And yet, halfway through a quiet night shift, a worker named Angel walked past and found the door shut tight. Something had pulled it closed hard enough to override the stopper completely. Angel went back to the security monitors and pulled the footage from earlier in the shift. You can even see a shadow faintly on the door before it moves. The location matters here. Angel was working at a psychiatric hospital, the kind of building that accumulates decades of fear, grief, and confusion inside its walls. Staff at places like this tend to collect stories whether they believe in the paranormal or not. Doors that close themselves, call buttons that ring from empty rooms, footsteps in corridors long after the last patient has been settled. A faulty stopper and a strong draft could account for this one on its own. Old buildings shift and air pressure changes when someone opens an exterior door at the far end of the wing. Angel, for what it's worth, doesn't buy that explanation, and they don't work night shifts at that hospital anymore. A spanner hurls itself across a kitchen in the Northern Territory. No one is near it. No one is in the lounge room it came from, and the woman standing closest to it is on the phone, in full view of a second camera at the exact moment of impact.
Here, guys! Hi! Hey!
It's a spanner.
That noise was caused by a spanner, which crashed into a kitchen cabinet with great force. One of our sound recordists, Danny Sims, saw it all.
That footage was recorded inside a small blue weatherboard house on the outskirts of Darwin in April 1998. By the time the cameras finally left, a national TV crew, 3 priests, 2 of Australia's most respected paranormal investigators, and eventually a judge in a courtroom would all agree on one thing: something was inside that house. And to this day, nobody has been able to explain what it was.
Something is happening in that house that I can't explain, that 3 Catholic priests can't explain, that a Greek Orthodox priest can't explain, that yourselves, other journalists have been there, other visitors have been there, and they all tell exactly the same tale. You know.
The address is 90 McMinns Drive, Humpty Doo, about 40 kilometres southeast of Darwin. 4 bedrooms, a swimming pool, an outdoor bar, 5 acres of scrubland at the end of a long gravel driveway. In August 1997, 3 housemates moved in together: a fisherman everyone called Murph, a mechanic named Dave, and Dave's partner Jill. For 5 months, the house was completely quiet. Then in January 1998, a second couple moved in to help with the rent: Andrew and Kirsty Agius and their 11-month-old daughter Jasmine.
We just get annoyed because we think it's not gone. Everyone tells us, the priest, the clairvoyant, here's Murph just saying 3 hours ago that the clairvoyant's rung and she said it's gone. Well, it's not gone, is it? It's obviously not gone, and that's all there is to it.
And within weeks, something happened that may or may not matter to this story. Murph's best friend, a man named Troy Radatz, was killed in a horrific accident on the Stewart Highway, just a couple of kilometres from the house. Troy was driving a truck loaded with paint thinners when the truck hit a tree. The thinners exploded, and Troy and his co-worker were burned alive inside the cab. Within weeks of Troy's funeral, the activity inside the house began. It was the monsoon season and the top end was getting hammered by wild tropical storms. One evening, the 5 adults were sitting together on the front veranda at dusk when small pebbles began landing among them. At first, they assumed it was a prank, kids throwing stones from the tree line beyond the property, so they got up and went inside the house. The pebbles followed them in. Half-inch stones from their own driveway began materializing just below the ceiling, appearing out of thin air and falling onto floors, tables, beds, and heads. The ground outside was saturated from days of monsoon rain, but every single pebble that fell inside the house was completely bone dry. Then came the flying objects: knives, batteries, spanners, broken glass, bottles. A CD player was hurled to the floor and glass cabinet doors smashed from the inside. At one point, Murph climbed into the roof cavity to try and find whoever was doing it.
Well, as soon as I opened up the manhole, I got showered with rocks from the ceiling. Just came straight out of the ceiling.
What, the gravel?
Yeah, the gravel from the driveway.
The moment he opened the manhole, he was showered with gravel from his own driveway. Gravel that shouldn't have been up there at all.
Yeah, the gravel from the driveway.
How did it get into the roof and then onto you?
Well, it wasn't there before, and there was none up there when I got up there.
And then the words started appearing. They appeared in Scrabble tiles scrawled in marker pen on the walls, and most disturbingly of all, they were spelled out in hundreds of individual pebbles, each one carefully placed so that only the white side was showing. The first 4 words were fire, skin, car, and help. And then one morning, a new word appeared on the floor. The word was car. Whatever was in that house seemed to be giving hints. Desperate, the household called in 3 separate priests and not one of them could stop it. Father Tom English, a local Catholic, was greeted on arrival by a pistol cartridge that fell from nowhere at his feet. During one visit, a medicine bottle flew out of an empty bathroom in the center of the house and shot across the living room. When he blessed the property, the activity got worse. His own crucifix and Bible were hurled around the rooms. On camera later, Father Tom admitted he had no idea what he'd witnessed. He said the bottle had come out of a room nobody was standing in, and that he simply couldn't explain how it had flown the way it did.
How could that bottle have flown the way it did?
Don't ask me.
A second priest, Father Stephen from St. Mary's Cathedral in Darwin, had seen poltergeist cases before in his home country of India. He watched a knife pass directly through the ceiling and fall to the floor in front of him. He told the residents grimly that polts were notoriously difficult to exorcise. The third priest was Greek Orthodox. He set up a full altar on the kitchen table and began reading scripture in Greek and Latin. According to Murph, who was standing right there at the time, the priest's Bible began twisting in his hands as he read. The man's arms were being wrenched and his hair was being blown backward by a wind that wasn't there. He left Australia 2 days later, returned to Greece, and never came back.
Doing his exorcist thing in Greek or Latin or whatever it was, and it was he had a Bible in his hand, and it was just twisting the Bible around, tearing his arms off. His hair was blowing back. This is in the kitchen.
Word of the haunting eventually reached Sydney. In April 1998, Channel 7's Today Tonight signed an exclusive with the residents and flew a film crew up to the Northern Territory. They arrived expecting to expose a hoax. They installed 5 static cameras throughout the house, and they brought a secret weapon, a thermal imaging camera operated by a Brisbane-based specialist named Brendan Gowdy. The plan was simple. If any object flew across a room, the thermal camera would pick up the warm handprint of whoever had just thrown it. The residents were never told what the thermal camera was really for. Within days, the crew had been pelted with, in their own words, steak knives, a spanner, a pair of scissors, a battery, shards of glass, and 3 live bullets.
And most worrying of all, 3 live bullets.
A spanner flies through the air from a room that was completely empty.
Yeah, it'll just right when you friggin' least expect it. Here it goes! Hey! Hey! It's a spanner!
That noise was caused by a spanner which crashed into a kitchen cabinet with great force. One of our sound recordists, Danny Sims, saw it all.
The sound recordist, Danny Sims, was filming a kitchen cabinet when a spanner crashed into it at full force. The lounge room camera, the only room the spanner could have come from, proved nobody was in the lounge. Kirsty Agius, the only other person on that side of the house, was on the phone in full view of a third camera at the exact moment of impact. On camera afterwards, Danny looked genuinely shaken. He said the spanner had appeared to come from the lounge room, but the lounge room had been completely empty.
I was just watching the cupboard there, and next minute I heard this almighty bang, and my eyes caught the spanner bounce off the cupboard and hit the floor.
Where did the spanner come from?
I don't know. It looked like it came out the lounge room, but there was no one in the lounge room.
And then Brendan Godey's thermal camera started picking up something the crew wasn't expecting at all.
It was the flying glass which baffled our thermal camera operator, Brendan Gowdy.
What we're looking at is thermal images taken approximately every 2 to 3 seconds.
After one incident, he swept the FLIR across a large shard of glass that had just materialized on the floor. What he saw didn't match any hoax he could imagine.
An overall picture here, how quickly.
The heat was spread evenly across the entire surface. No fingerprints, no palm prints, no hot spots where human hands had gripped it. Just a uniform film of warmth that dissipated within 60 seconds. On camera, Godey compared it to a microwave. He said something had laid a film of energy across the glass, and he called himself baffled by the whole thing.
I was baffled. I mean, if I had to say something, I'd say it was a bit like a microwave, you know? Something put a film of energy over the top of it, and that energy is what we actually witnessed disappearing.
But the moment that broke the entire case open came when Brendan Gowdy was the only person in the house.
That was difficult to explain.
Brendan was also witness to a particularly violent incident. He was the only person in the house when this happened.
Whoa, what the?
A live bullet ricocheted onto the carpet.
A live bullet appeared in mid-air, dropped from the direction of the ceiling, ricocheted off a piece of furniture and rolled to a stop on the carpet. It was captured on 2 separate camera angles. In slow motion, you can see it hit, bounce, and come to rest. The cameraman watching the monitor from another room can be heard reacting in real time.
Whoa, what the?
Brendan Gowdy was alone in the house at the time. The thermal camera showed no handprints on the bullet, no human contact, no trace of a thrower anywhere.
From a scientific point of view, I have no explanation for what occurred.
And Channel 7 wasn't the only independent witness to what was happening inside that house. Jack Ellis, the editor of the local Litchfield Times, had walked into the property thinking it was an April Fool's joke. Within half an hour, a shower of gravel fell on his head from inside an overhead fan, and he walked out a believer. On camera, he said either it was the greatest hoax Australia had ever seen, or there was something in that house he simply couldn't explain.
Either it's the greatest hoax that's ever been seen certainly in this country, or else it's there's something in there that I just don't know.
Is it possible that this is a hoax?
No.
A Darwin radio journalist named Tracy Farrer witnessed a crucifix fly across a room out of nowhere. A security guard sent by the landlord to inspect the property had a knife land in front of him while talking to 2 people whose hands were completely empty. He refused to set foot on the property again. And then there were Tony Healy and Paul Cropper, 2 of the most respected paranormal investigators in the country. They happened to already be in the Northern Territory investigating an unrelated Yowie sighting when they heard Father Tom on the radio talking about levitating crucifixes. They drove straight to the house and stayed for 4 days. In those 4 days alone, Cropper personally documented 37 separate incidents. The one that haunted him most wasn't even particularly dramatic. He was sitting alone at the kitchen table one morning when small gravel stones began falling onto his head, one at a time, straight out of thin air above him. Late in the investigation, Channel 7's Sydney producers thought they'd found their smoking gun. In a reflection caught in a cabinet door during an unrelated piece of footage, they believed they could see Kirsty Agius throwing an object. Confronted over the phone, Kirsty admitted it. She had thrown that one thing. Her reason, she said, was that she was desperate for Australia to believe what was happening to her family, and she thought a single-stage throw would tip the scales. Channel 7 ran with the hoax angle, and the country wrote the story off. But here's the problem with that conclusion. Kirsty's single admission explains exactly one incident out of more than 30 the crew personally witnessed. She wasn't in the house for several of them. She had no line of sight to the spanner, the bullet, or the thermally anomalous glass. She couldn't have been in two places at once when Danny Sims filmed the kitchen cabinet, and she wasn't there at all for the 37 incidents Healy and Cropper logged after Channel 7 had already packed up and flown home. And then there's the part of this story that, to my knowledge, has never happened anywhere else in the world. The landlord eventually took the residents to court trying to evict them for the damage to the property, and in one of the strangest rulings in Australian legal history, the judge refused to grant the eviction. The damage the court accepted had been caused by a poltergeist. An Australian court formally accepted the supernatural defence. In early May 1998, after roughly 4 months of it, the residents walked out of the house, not because of the polt, but because of the ridicule that followed the hoax story. They left on their own terms. And the moment they walked out the front door, the activity stopped completely. It has never returned to that house since. The little blue house at 90 McMinns Drive is still standing today. A separate building on the same property reportedly burned down at some point after the residents left, which is worth remembering, because the very first word the polt ever spelled out in Pebbles was the word fire. In their 2014 book on Australian poltergeist cases, Healy and Cropper ranked Humpty Doo 4.5 out of 5. It was the second highest rated case in a catalogue of more than 50 incidents stretching all the way back to 1845. Cropper, reflecting on it 25 years later, said he still sometimes catches himself wondering if it really happened. And then he thinks about it more carefully and he remembers that yes, it absolutely did. More than 30 witnesses, a judge, 3 priests, a national TV crew with a thermal camera, 2 of the country's most experienced paranormal investigators. All of them watched objects appear out of thin air inside a small blue house in the top end of Australia. And not one of them has ever been able to explain it.
I don't know, it just bounced. It bounced off here, somewhere. I don't know. There's no way it could have come in the window because of the fly screen.
So where did that bit of glass come from?
So what really happened inside that house in 1998? A grieving spirit looking for the mates he'd left behind on the Stewart Highway? An unconscious psychic eruption from a household in mourning? Or something we just don't have a word for yet? Let us know in the comments.
Here it goes! Hey! It's a spanner.
That noise was caused by a spanner which crashed into a kitchen cabinet with great force. One of our sound recordists, Danny Sims, saw it all.
It's 3 in the morning at a kaolin processing plant and there's only one electrician on duty, alone in the entire building. That's when the door handle starts moving by itself. The footage was sent in by a viewer named Jonathan, whose colleague was the one working that solo night shift. There's nothing on the other side, an empty corridor, no one inside anywhere. But this is where the clip gets genuinely difficult to explain. He walks around to the other side of the door and shows the camera the exterior handle. It's dead bolted, and the mechanism is so stiff he has to force it. And here's the critical detail. Pushing down on the outside handle doesn't move the inside handle at all. The two handles aren't mechanically linked in the way you'd normally expect them to be, which means whatever was working that inside handle wasn't doing it from the corridor. It was doing it from inside the workshop in a room Jonathan's colleague was absolutely certain he was alone in. Take a moment to count the feet in this photo. Dad on the floor in a red shirt, the uncle on the left, and the kids draped across laps. A perfectly ordinary family photo from around 2007, taken in a perfectly ordinary apartment. Now go back and count again, because there's something wrong with this picture. There appears to be 1 foot too many in that frame. The photo was shared on Reddit by a user who says it had been lost for years before their younger sister rediscovered it in a box of old family pictures. They've gone through it inch by inch, limb by limb, and they cannot account for the extra foot. Every person in the picture is fully accounted for. The maths simply doesn't work. Commenters have tried to make sense of it. Some have said it's a trick of perspective, a leg folded at an angle that makes it look detached from its owner. Others have pointed out that the angle is wrong because the foot appears to come from a direction where nobody is sitting. And that's the part nobody on Reddit has been able to reconcile. It isn't a shadow and it isn't a reflection from somewhere off frame. It's a solid visible foot tucked into a family photo the family never noticed until nearly 20 years after it was taken.
Going insane over those blue.
Pink flowers, then blue, then pink again, all in the same hedge, all within 24 hours, all caught on camera.
I knew I wasn't crazy. Those are blue now. Those aren't pink. Those are completely...
The clip came from TikTok creator RCL Beauty, who swore up and down that the flowers in her backyard were blue. Then she went out to film them the next day and they were unmistakably pink.
I think this plant might change colors over the day. Okay, here's the color of it right now, right? That's pink.
The internet did exactly what the internet does in this situation. Mandela effect, simulation theory, glitch in the code, thousands of comments piled in within hours, convinced they were watching reality stutter in real time.
I'm going insane over those blue. I think this plant might change colors over the day. Okay, here's the color of it right now, right? That's pink.
Then came the follow-up clip. A day later, she films the same bush again and the flowers are blue once more.
I knew I wasn't crazy. Those are blue now. Those aren't pink. Those are completely... I'm so confused.
At this point, people were genuinely losing it in the comments section. Parallel timelines, reality bugs, a rendering engine cracking under the load of generating someone's backyard. And then the gardeners showed up in the comments with a much simpler answer. The flowers, they pointed out, are almost certainly morning glories. It's a species that actually does change colour throughout the day, shifting from blue to pink and back again, as the pH level inside the plant fluctuates with temperature and sunlight. No glitch, no parallel universe, just a flower doing exactly what it evolved to do, in front of a camera, at the exact wrong moment for everyone who wanted it to be proof of something stranger.
I knew I wasn't crazy. Those are blue now. Those aren't pink. Those are completely... I'm so confused.
Tell me what you guys think.
She couldn't sleep that night because her mother had only been dead for a week.
My mom had just passed away a little bit before this, and I was really upset.
Sitting alone in the kitchen in the early hours of the morning, she suddenly felt something change in the room. It wasn't a sound, and it wasn't a movement, just the unmistakable sense that she wasn't alone in there anymore. She picked up her phone and opened an app called GhostTube, which uses the phone's sensors to map what it interprets as environmental anomalies in real time.
And I'm just playing with the Ghost Finder app on the GhostTube.
And then something else appeared on the screen that she wasn't expecting.
I'm like, if it's you, Mom, move, turn, do something, and it did.
A humanoid figure was standing in the kitchen with her in a spot where there was nothing. No chair, no appliance, no object at all for the sensor to catch on.
But to me, it gave me comfort.
The clip was sent in by a viewer named James, whose girlfriend is the one filming the scene. Both of them genuinely believe what she saw on that screen was her mum. One final visit in the middle of a night she couldn't get through on her own. Now, GhostTube apps are, to put it kindly, controversial in the paranormal community. Most serious investigators consider them little more than random noise dressed up in augmented reality, and the figures they draw are almost always false positives. But the timing of this particular one is hard to shake off. 1 week after the loss, in the middle of the night, in a room where a grieving daughter had just said out loud that she could feel her mum standing beside her.
And disappeared, and I'm like, if it's you, Mom, move, turn, do something, and it did. I know it's crazy, but...
Whatever the sensor did or didn't actually pick up that morning, it gave her something she desperately needed in that moment. and some things don't need to be objectively true in order to matter to the person experiencing them.
But to me, it gave me comfort.
A bird is flying across the sky, and at first glance there's nothing unusual about it at all, until you notice the light. There's a rhythmic, mechanical flash blinking on and off somewhere around its wings. The clip was shared on Reddit's Glitch in the Matrix forum, and it set the comments section absolutely on fire. Some people called it proof of a simulation failing to render properly. Others went further and pulled out one of the internet's old favourites: the birds aren't real conspiracy. For anyone unfamiliar, Birds Aren't Real started in 2017 as a deliberate parody of internet conspiracy culture. The joke claimed the US government had quietly replaced all real birds with surveillance drones. It was satire, and it was pretty obvious satire at that. And yet every time a clip like this surfaces online, the joke gets a second life. Because on a grainy phone screen, a blinking light on a bird is almost exactly what a drone would look like. The likely answers here are much more grounded. Councils and wildlife researchers fit tracking beacons to migratory birds all the time, and some of those beacons carry small LEDs that blink at intervals. A laser pointer from the ground can produce an almost identical looking flicker. Static electricity has even been suggested as a possibility, though that one's a bit of a stretch. Odds of this clip is showing a research tag catching the sun at just the right angle. A boring answer to a video that's launched 1,000 conspiracy threads online. If you want to see more scary videos, then hit that subscribe button and turn on all channel notifications. That way you'll always know when we drop our scary video compilations. It stood about 30 to 40 centimeters tall, ran on 2 legs that bent the wrong way, and vanished straight into the side of a hillside in Mexico. That's what a man says he saw when he pulled up outside his own house late one night, and the statue he found there the very next morning is the part that nobody can quite make sense of. The account was shared on Reddit by a user known as art_nymphed, whose boyfriend had the encounter himself. His house sits right at the base of a hillside, scrubby terrain that he knows intimately, having lived there for years already. As he approached the property in the dark that night, something pale caught his eye near the bottom of the slope. It was small, white, and clearly bipedal, moving on 2 legs. But the legs, he said, didn't bend the way a human's legs would. They bent backwards on themselves, more like the legs of a goat. There was no visible tail anywhere on its body. It moved fast, unnaturally fast for something its size, and then it was simply gone, into the hillside itself, almost as if the slope had absorbed it whole. He didn't sleep much that night. The next morning, out of sheer curiosity, he went back to the exact same spot in daylight to have a proper look around the area. There was a stone statue sitting on the ground in the spot where the creature had been the night before. It was a small carved figure, weathered and old-looking, and something he was absolutely certain hadn't been there the day before. He walks past that spot regularly, and he would have noticed it. Neither he nor his girlfriend could identify what the statue was meant to represent. It didn't match any local style of carving they recognized. It just sat there, as if it had always been there. Mexican folklore has no shortage of small, bipedal, goat-legged entities. Duendes, chaneques, nahuales, spirits and creatures said to live in the wild places at the edges of human settlement, and said to leave offerings or demand them from the people who share their land. He isn't the sort of person who believes in any of that, or at least, he wasn't before that night. The statue is still sitting on the property to this day. Neither of them has been able to bring themselves to move it from where they found it. Continue watching more scary videos. These are the scariest of 2025.